Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared. My lovely wife Kara is at work, and today we're talking about 5 most dangerous knives. Now, I got this idea from Blade Banker. I'm going to link his video below. Now, what it's basically about is 5 times knives cut you or injured you, and I've been cut by the majority of my knives, so pretty much all of them have done that, but I picked 5 different stories. Now, also in Blade Banker's story, he talks about this stuff, which is liquid bandage. I call it liquid stitch. And he talked about how this stuff burns, and it does burn. When you have a nasty cut, if you when you put it on, it does work. It basically just super glues your skin back together. Well, I'm going to talk about one story that wasn't a knife, but it was actually another time I had to use this, and it was on my eyebrow. I got into a fight, and it was a fight at a party, and somebody hit me over the head with a bottle, and it knocked my eyebrow basically off. It split me right above my my eye, above my eyebrow, and my eyebrow was basically hanging off. It was bleeding pretty bad. It was an empty bottle, and empty bottles, they don't break. So it hit me pretty hard, and instead of going to the hospital, we wound up using this stuff, not this exact bottle, but yeah. So this is what fixed that up, and that was basically the first time I got introduced into this stuff. And it was because I wasn't willing to go to the hospital. My brother-in-law was basically an embalmer, person that works at a funeral home, and you know, does everything for the funeral. You know, gets the body ready for the funeral and stuff like that. And he brought over a needle and thread that was used for dead people, and I was like, "Do it, sew it." And my sister wouldn't let him. My sister stopped him, and she hurried up and ran to the store real quick. I think it was a gas station because it was the middle of the night. She pulled out this stuff, and that was the first time I got to use it. And I didn't feel a thing, though, with that time. I was a little intoxicated, but I've used it many times on many different cuts, and it does work good, but it does burn a little bit. Not too bad, but it does burn, but it works really good. So if you need to do stuff without a band-aid on your hand, because maybe it's making things difficult, this stuff works really good. I recommend putting a couple coats on, though. Okay, so let's get to this story. So the first one's about Kara, actually, and it's about a Socom, Microtech Socom Elite that we borrowed. And in a video that we did on the Microtech Socom, at the very end of the video, you'll see me throwing bottles of water at Kara, and Kara cutting them in half. Well, the part we edited out was the second bottle that I threw at her. She cut right in half, but it went through the bottle, and she actually hit herself in the knee. I'm going to put in a picture of that scar. Now, you probably can't, I mean, you can see the scar pretty bad, but it's a big scar, and that thing was deep. That was all the way to the bone. She had to get stitches, but we didn't put it in the video because we didn't want it to get demonetized. So that was a Socom Elite, but that was just being reckless and swinging a knife around, and especially putting a big knife in her hand. Not saying she can't handle big knives, but, you know, it was a big knife, and she swung it, and she swung it hard, and it hit her hard. Plus, it had a really sharp edge. Now, the second one. The second one is a knife that I actually broke, and I broke it working. And what I did was I was working at it was a custom window factory, and I was in the shop and I was working, but on the way to work I needed a knife. Didn't have one. I didn't bring a knife with me, so I bought a cheap Gerber. And this is another reason why I don't really like Gerber. I barely used the knife, and I I wasn't even prying on anything that hard, but I might have been prying a little bit, but it literally just snapped. It really showed the weakness of the heat treat. Now, since then, or that day, I put it on the grinder, and I wound up grinding it down to a little pry bar so I could continue using the blade. But when it broke, I wound up cutting myself pretty bad, not because of the blade cutting me, but because of what I hit when it broke. There was it was like on a bench, and there was a bunch of metal parts around me. You know, since it was a custom window place, you know, there's all different types of metal pieces and parts and stuff like that, and I smacked one of them, and I wound up cutting my knuckle pretty bad. Next, I got a bunch of these stories. So next, this is not it, but I had a Bowie knife, okay? And I was really poor at the time, and the only way I could heat my house at the time was with a fireplace. And I was chopping wood, and I basically had to chop wood all night long. If you've ever had to heat your house with a fireplace, it's horrible. It's horrible. It was a big house, first of all. Old house. The insulation wasn't very good. And basically, if you let that fire go out, you're freezing to death. I'm talking about 6 blankets, and you're sleeping next to the fire. And I had all the wood, you know, in my house next to the fire, and no matter what, it's never enough wood. So all night long, I'd wake up and I'd chop wood. I'd chop wood. I'd chop wood. Well, I was holding a piece of the wood. It was actually this finger right here. You see the scar right there. This was years ago. So I was chopping it, and it went through the wood all the way through, and bam, got me good. It split me wide open all the way to the bone. And yeah, and I think that was the day before Thanksgiving, if I can remember correctly. But really bad. Very, very bad. And the thing was I was so used to chopping the wood that I mean, I was just too used to it, and I stopped being careful because I was just entirely way too used to it. Next is, and we're going to bring back this one when we talk about this, assisted knives. I don't have very many, but here's a couple cheapies, and then this is a good representation of an assisted knife. This is a USA-made Kershaw Knockout. This is just a cheap Smith & Wesson knife, and this is that Gerber we talked about earlier. I do not know the model. Doesn't matter. Don't get one. It's a button lock. Button lock assist. Anyways, so I had an assisted knife, and it had the clip on the top, okay? And at this time, it was in my pocket, and I didn't know, but it went off. So it was in my pocket facing straight up while I went to get my knife. And so the blade is facing, let me use this one to represent it. Yep, this is the top one. So it's facing up like that. I went to get it, and it sliced me good because you're not paying attention. Like, you don't think your knife is open. So I went to get it fast. Like, it was like if the knife is still open, I went to get it fast, and I went to grab it, and bam, and it cut me good. I don't have the scar no more or anything. I guess I healed pretty good, but it cut me really, really good. It actually cut me twice. It cut me on the finger and then the hand. You know, however that goes. I think maybe I jumped. I don't know. But I've had that actually happen a couple times where I've just gotten poked by an assisted knife that opened up, and I just got poked, and then I realized what it was, or it was open and it poked me in the hip. That's another reason why I don't like clips on top, especially on assisted knives, but I especially don't like assisted knives. This is the one knife that I'm okay with being assisted. Now, I know there's some good assisted knives out there, and I'm not talking crap about them. I'm just saying my experience. Next. Okay, so I've had knives that have failed on me. Like right now, this knife is locked, but if I take this knife and bam, done. Or, look at my finger, bam, done. So I've been on a knife, a cheap knife, and this is another reason why I like quality knives. I do not like cheap knives because I've worked with them, in construction and been pushing down, and bam, and literally had them slice me right open on the finger from failing. Now, not from hitting, spine whacking it or anything like that, but just from the pressure of my thumb, like just like there. I mean, you see, I mean, it's locked up as far as it can go, bam. And it's because the lock bar isn't locking up fully, and this one's a little bit bent. But when you have too early of lockup without good blade geometry and a poor quality knife, it can happen, and it's happened to me, and it's hurt pretty bad. Now, this is a quality knife, but it can be considered, I guess you could think of it as, it's a knife that you need to be pretty good with knives, I think, to own this, or at least just get good with it, because this thing has cut me many, many times. When I first got it, now let me show you why first. So, when you unlock it, you got a pry right here. Now, when you first start using this, your muscle memory for how to hold this like this and pull back with this finger and having the muscle to do it every time isn't there yet when you first get it. So you're just not used to it. So usually people get this and they go like this, because they're just not used to going like that. It's just not normal to them. But after you get good with it, it's actually very easy, and it's a very, very reliable knife. But when you first get it, this can happen. So this thing is, it is a free swinger. See that? And then you see how it kind of bounces back, how it doesn't just lock up? Because if it doesn't lock up all the way, and if you're putting pressure certain ways, it flings back. And when it flings back, see right now I'm blocking it from doing it, but when it does it, it comes back with authority. So you'll go to shoot it open, and instead of it locking up, it'll hit and bounce back. And when you're not used to doing it, you go to fling it open like this, and you're not realizing that it's going to come back, so your finger instantly wraps around here. So at the same time, when you go like this, you put your finger there, and then you don't realize it's coming back, and bam. Now, another time, I did basically the same thing, but what happened was I was trying to, or I've done that many times, I should say, where it's literally caught me, and I've realized don't ever put your fingers in the way of this path, because even sometimes closing, you'll go to close it and it'll smack, come back, bounce there, and then come back again. So you want to open it up with authority. You want to know how to use it. But when you do, it's an amazing knife. I really do like it. And the detent is kind of light because it's just based on this little part right there. Now you can strengthen that back here. And it's a very reliable knife, but you just want to make sure you keep your fingers out from here. But one time I was going to close it like this, and I hadn't gotten the coordination down yet, and I went to go like this, and it flung out of my hand, opened, and sliced me right down my leg. And it got me pretty good. It sliced me right on my not my calf, but my thigh. That's where it got me. It got me on my thigh and sliced me about 10 inches, 8 to 10 inches. It was a good cut. Plus, I had just sharpened this thing to the point to where this thing was a razor. Now, I'm going to show a couple more. Now, I've also gotten myself with this Ballast song many times. I got this other one that I actually got from Blade Banker that made this video, and but I've never gotten cut by this specific one. Now, I have gotten cut by this one. This one is, it's metal, so it's heavy, and just messing with it, flinging it around, and, you know, flipping it, I've gotten cut pretty bad by this. One thing is when you're trying to do tricks, and you don't realize that, like, that you switched handles, and now the blade is towards you, so it can cut you if you're holding the wrong handle. That's why you want to hold the safe handle, which always gives you the spine of the blade rather than the edge. So you want to make sure you know what you're doing when you're flipping it around and which side you are grabbing. Now also, I want to talk about one more thing Blade Banker talked about falling asleep while fidgeting. Now, a lot of us flip our knives. We'll be sitting there thinking and just sitting there fidgeting and not paying attention. And eventually, sometimes we'll be doing it in our bed. And I've done that many times. Me and my wife had to, at one point, make a rule. No ballad songs in bed. Because we'd be flipping them, you know, and it would go flying out of one of our hands. And so we made a rule, no ballad songs in bed. But we didn't make a rule, no flippers. So I'd be flipping a knife, and sometimes I'd flip it open, like on my last leg of like whether or not I'm asleep or awake, and pass out. And I did the same thing Blade Banker talked about in his video, where I fell asleep with it in my hand. Luckily, I didn't get cut as bad as he did. Go watch his video. He talks all about it. I don't want to tell his story. It's a little different than mine. But yeah, I fallen asleep and then woke up and like I don't know if I realized or I woke up and I jumped. And when I jumped, realizing like I had an open knife, I don't know, maybe just like in my sleep I realized it. I don't know. But I've done it a couple times, so it's not just like it happened once. And one time I poked myself in the leg, and then another, so I stabbed myself, literally stabbed myself on the side of the leg, and then another time I cut myself in the finger. Now I'm pretty good with, if I'm fidgeting in bed, I literally fidget a few times and then I set it down on the thing. I've been pretty good with that lately, so I don't want to jinx myself, but yeah. And you've seen how it just failed a second ago? That's one of the things that happens. You want to be deliberate with this knife, but it is an amazing knife when you get used to it. There's the video, guys. I love you guys. Peace!